Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowering Leaders podcast. At A Leader, we are passionate about inspiring connections and creating a world of collaboration. Our signature program, A Leader Connect, curates groups of 5 to 6 leaders from diverse backgrounds in sport, industry, social venture and the arts who come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
It's been amazing. Here you are on this Zoom call, feeling within the first session like you intimately know these people and care for them. And then all of a sudden realizing that even though you're in totally different industries, we're all going through the same thing, or we've been through it and we can help each other, or there's just this hurdle that you can't see past. And then you share it with the group and there's 5 answers in 40 minutes and you think, I have not slept for 2 weeks thinking about that. Like, how is this possible?
So you're listening to stories and the breadcrumbs of what makes success, and I constantly get something out of these Zoom calls and catch-ups because we're all living the same stuff, aren't we?
Extraordinary people with extraordinary experience. What happens there is magical.
The Empowering Leaders podcast is proudly brought to you by Victoria University, where cutting-edge sports and exercise science facilities like heat chambers, performance labs, and altitude environments mean VU is ranked 7th in the world for sports science. VU, uniquely you. As always, a big thank you to Jason Nicholas and his team at Temper Bedding, a mattress like no other. If you enjoy listening to the Empowering Leaders podcast, be sure to subscribe, and please, if you have a moment, we would love you to leave a review so we can reach more listeners and empower more leaders. Today on Empowering Leaders, we're joined by one of the most compelling young voices in Australia right now. Her focus, intellect and courage are helping shape what our future could look like. Yasmin Poole is an award-winning speaker, writer and advocate who's represented Australia at the UN, APEC and the G20, and was recently named one of Australian Financial Review's 100 most influential women. Yasmin is a Rhodes Scholar whose work explores how policy can better include voices across race, gender, disability and sexuality. She's also a board member at Oz Harvest and has long been a national ambassador for Plan International, pushing for greater representation of young women in public life. Yasmin's journey isn't just about accolades. From growing up in country Victoria in a low-income family to undergoing major back surgery for scoliosis, having to literally learn to walk again, Yasmin's gone on to become a much-needed voice for justice on our national stage. And Yasmin, as we were just discussing before the mics turned on, I sat next to you at a function not long after lockdown, and we were trying to remember, I can't exactly remember what it was for, but I remember thinking that is a courageous, intelligent, strong young lady who's going to make a difference. And admired you from afar since. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luke. I can tell you've done your research at that intro, so I'm excited what we're going to cover today.
You've got an incredible sense of justice, it seems, for sitting across from a young woman. Can you tell us about growing up in country Victoria and how those experiences shaped the leader that you've become today?
Well, I kind of feel like I've grown up all over the place. I went to 8 primary schools. So I started off in CBD, Melbourne. My family then moved out to rural Victoria, like you said, regional Victoria, just out on the outskirts of Bendigo, in a town called Axedale. And then later I grew up in a rainforest around high school. So I feel like I've seen all these different spots. But for me, country Victoria was interesting, I think, from different angles. The first part that I remember that stands out to me was when I was there, there was a really terrible bushfire season. And that actually led to me getting this idea in my head. I don't really know how, but I was like, all right, how can I raise money? It was, I think, year 3. I was like, all right, I'm taking guitar lessons once a week. What if I just start, post outside of my local IGA, play my guitar, see what happens? And so I did. Yeah, I did that for about, the rest of my time basically in Bendigo, where I was performing all around town and, raising money, particularly for the Red Cross. And to me, that was actually like the first time that I guess I stood in front of people and I, while I wasn't speaking, it was singing. And I think that actually shaped a lot of kind of the confidence to do what I do now at that age. So that's kind of what stands out to me. But I think the second part was particularly my mother being a Muslim woman, wasn't really what you would see, at least, where I grew up. So I think from that age, I think I got and really felt that clear sense of difference that I think, again, has also really shaped my activism today at the time I never would have thought it would, but it really kind of evolved how I understood my place in Australia, my mum's place, and maybe some of the issues there and what we could be.
And your mum's influence, was she a strong voice for you on wanting to stand up and change things, or did you just organically, as you said, you started playing guitar, you wanted to help people? How powerful was your mum in all that?
Well, I think my mum had the very kind of classic migrant mentality of keep your head down, don't complain. And the stories that I heard from her was growing up in a post 9/11 Australia. And, I was born in 1998, so it was soon after when a lot of things changed when it came to how Muslims were seen in Australia. And she told me, she stopped wearing the hijab around that time because of the look she would get, the treatment she would get. There were kids that, spat at her, because of that. So that was the kind of stories that I grew up with. But she wasn't the type to necessarily say push back, resist, because especially to a migrant mum, it's like, you got to be so careful. I guess there's that fear of seeing your child stand up and what might happen to them because of what happened to you. So I think actually in the beginning when I started doing my activism, she was like, are you sure you want to say that to that politician? Like she was a bit nervous for me, but she's come around, and I think she kind of sees now that I use the opportunities that I have to, really fight for those who, aren't able to or don't have that voice, or people like my mum, basically. So,
where did your mum migrate from?
she's from Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's had that sense of caution a little bit around, and that's why from sitting across at you and not understanding your background, you could just see there was a courage in you to stand up, and that takes courage. Does that come at a cost at times?
100%. I think it makes, sometimes I like, when I am doing, like when I'm speaking up, I'm like, oh, do I have to say that? There's like a part of me that, because it is really, even emotionally, if you think about what it does to your nervous system, especially to go forward and say something that might make others uncomfortable or disagree or challenge in some way. And often, when it actually comes to things that matter, that's the stuff that will get the most harsh pushback, because you are saying something that's actually changing something, and that's actually the toughest. So I think that, it's also, I think the more I learn about the world, sometimes it's the harder it is to navigate, because when you get that sense of, you see that injustice, it's hard to hold and navigate in the everyday. So I think it is challenging, but it's also something where, like, I couldn't live with myself if I was just silent and said nothing and was really like a passenger in life. And what I take from my mum's story and my experience is, I can't change what's happened to me, but I can speak about it, and I can turn it into something physical, malleable, something that I can put forward in the world rather than just receiving what the world gives me. So that's what I try to bring with it, even, despite the challenges.
Still only 26. It's incredible what you've been able to achieve with your studies and your advocacy and the presence that you got. Was there a moment where, as a young woman, you're walking and working in the halls of Parliament, you thought, I've got this voice, I can make a difference? Can you remember a specific time?
For me, I think it was the first time I was on Q&A, and I remember when I got that call. I was, I think, 20, just about to turn 21. And the way that I had kind of started my platform is, again, kind of classic in my generation, was through social media and Twitter at the time, which is obviously, we know what's happened there. So that's kind of, how I was, doing my advocacy, and particularly framing political issues from youth perspectives, and, kind of just doing it consistently. I got that call to be on Q&A, and at the time it was something kind of terrifying, because at the time I wanted to be a diplomat, which was like, you can't really have an opinion about anything. I was like, all right, I think I'm facing a bit of a crossroads here. Like, am I going to just sit back and say the lines or whatever and just not really do anything? Or am I just going to say what I feel? And on that panel, there was quite a conservative politician, and we were talking about bullying in schools and homophobia in schools. And he was up there, like denying it happens. And he was like, well, kids just get bullied over buck teeth and freckles and whatever. And I was like, mate, I've graduated like 2 years ago. I know that's not true. Like I can actually tell you it's not true. And again, that thing happened where it just kind of comes up from within, and it's not planned or coordinated, but, it was just to say, like, respectfully, it's been a couple of decades since you were in high school. That's to put it politely. And, this isn't the case. And I think from there it was realizing, actually, if I don't say this in this opportunity that I have, no one's going to bring it up. So if I just let that bite, then somebody's watching the TV or somebody's listening and they're like, either they don't even realize that's a possibility, or they're wondering, okay, this has happened to me and nobody's talking about it. So again, I try to reframe it. It's like you have this one moment. You have these little small decisions that we can make about what we say versus what we don't say, and just to grab that. So,
Yasmin, then you find yourself at the UN, at APEC, at G20 with a big platform. What challenges you the most when you're in those international settings about the current state of leadership in the world?
I mean, it's funny because actually in those spaces, I don't feel like I did feel that power. And I think because often in these kind of organised international forums, it's like there's youth spaces. So with G20, for example, it's so funny. It was actually such a weird story. It was in Papua New Guinea and it was held on cruise ships because of security concerns. So there was 2 cruise ships. One cruise ship for young people in the media, one cruise ship for all the leaders. It was the weirdest thing. So we were actually like segregated in a way. And
do youth advocacy over there. We don't really need to cross the bridge and have a chat to you. But
like it was still a cool opportunity. It was still pretty wild. But I actually think the places where, I felt like I learned the most is in more kind of organic spaces with young people. Like I assume we'll talk about it more, but like at Oxford, for example, it was like the ability to like really learn about all these different corners of the world and kind of build our own ecosystems. I think that's really where I found the most inspiration and possibility versus those forums. Like I remember at APEC, I was like, again, watching one of the presentations, and there was a guy who was fast asleep and just snoring. And honestly, I hate to like burst the bubble, but that's a lot of what these things are, is that they just are talk fests. And they're not actually talking to the people who are affected by these problems. And I remember sitting there listening to these panels about young people, and there was not a single young person there. And it's like, duh. But, I think often you get kind of these, it can get stuck in this bureaucracy and miss who we're actually talking about and using their knowledge.
So you go to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, which is incredible reflection on you and the person you are. And you just said then that's where you felt the most hope and the most possibility for the future. Tell us why.
Well, I mean, first I'll say with Rhodes, I feel mixed feelings about it because the money came from, and I don't know if this is well known, but apartheid South Africa. And Cecil Rhodes was a white Afrikaner who made his wealth off the backs of black South Africans, through mines. And that was a real ethical question for me. Do I take this money? And my logic was, okay, 1, I wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise, and this is an amazing opportunity. But 2, why not use that to study something that would make this guy roll in his grave? So that's what I did. I mean, my research was, again, how do you build systems that would never let a guy like this make that kind of wealth and off the backs of such exploitation? And that was really what drove me. And I think that also, when you take that kind of money, that comes with a ethical responsibility that whenever you see oppression and subjugation, you must speak up. Because again, if you're staying silent, that actually makes it worse, because think about the benefits that have gotten you there and who suffered for that. So that was the kind of grounding. So it was, even if that makes people uncomfortable, I again have that, to me, moral and ethical obligation to myself. But Oxford itself was a really cool experience. I think I went in thinking, okay, it's just going to be about the education and courses, but actually the most learning I had was from the people I was studying with, because I think being Australian, being kind of isolated from the rest of the world, you don't often get the chance to meet people from literally every single country. Yeah. And if something happened on the news in politics, it would play out in real time in my classroom. It was so interesting. And it wouldn't always be nice and fairies. It would be very emotional. And I think when I sat there realising the power dynamics and the responsibility that we have as Australians to the rest of the world, that was something that I'd never considered before, just being in Australia. And you realise, actually, I think often we downplay the influence and the power and responsibility we have. But I really felt it in that moment when you think about the soft power that we have, the resources. There's countries that really don't have that at all. And I think that added to that weight of responsibility to speak up, because we have the privilege and luxury to do so.
Yeah, you mentioned to me as we sat down, and the incredible work and contribution space that you have advocated for and your studies. But as you said, as a 26-year-old, you're still wanting to buy your own house, and that challenge. How do you juggle that conscience of wanting to just make good in the world, but also wanting to live a good life for yourself?
I mean, I think there can be both. Obviously, I don't think it's getting too nitpicky over every single decision. I think it's what I'm experiencing is what a lot of young people are also experiencing. So I think in a way that also just helps with the advocacy. It's like, yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're all struggling with the job market. We're all struggling with housing affordability. It's not just me. So I think often actually what I've experienced is really helpful to shape the language and again, realizing it's not just representing Yasmin Poole, it's representing many other young people who, when it comes to at least housing, are locked out. There's no opportunity there. It's a scary place to be in. So, that's what I try to bring. In terms of work, I mean, I think I guess coming back from the study space, this is a place that I'm re-encountering again. But the way that young people also work, I think, is different. I think it's having multiple avenues, doing multiple things at the same time. My kind of dream would be to have multiple projects. So I think the way that even we see careers is really, really changing, especially in the rise of the social media age. There's a lot of kind of small business and entrepreneurship that's coming from that. So many different angles. So I see that possibility. But yeah, to me, I just wouldn't, I kind of see the sacrifice often that leaders have to make when you're at this certain position of this silence and how they justify this silence. And that scares the hell out of me. And I'd rather have less money. I still want money to at least survive, right? But it's sometimes I think you kind of accept a large paycheck with such a catch. And I saw that happen at Oxford. I've seen that happen here. And I don't want that to be me.
Full of admiration for you and your sense of values. We use this term a lot in our leader. We're trying to check our bias. And as I get older, trying to do that more often. And you realise we've all got inherent bias, and it's a fight to do it. As you glanced at anyone, is that something that shows up for you? How do you go about thinking about checking your bias in any situation? I
think it's to realise that, while I feel like I am outspoken about what I've experienced, this isn't, not everyone's worldview is the same. People have experienced life very differently. And I think one thing to me that really changed how I saw the world was when I had the chance to visit the West Bank in Palestine. And for me, before I went there, I had a lot of kind of, I don't know, not even preconceived ideas, but just a lot of ignorance. I didn't really know. And when I had the chance to go there and see it for myself and see people suffering, and I saw the wall and I saw the way, I saw just horrendous inequality. And I think that totally shifted things for me, because it was to realize that the world is not the same as the way I've been told. And also there's a lot more about the world that I still have yet to know. And it is to keep that open-mindedness, to have the courage to be wrong, the courage to also learn, And I think every day I'm learning. I learn from my friends from all these corners of the world. I mean, I was just talking about the Middle East. I was just talking to my friend from Jordan who was literally watching the bombs overhead, and these are, again, worlds that I'll never experience, but I still, wherever possible, can support in raising awareness or amplifying or talking about it. And that's what I want to try to bring. And I think the world is changing every single day. So it's just to keep that, again, the courage to talk about it, to ask, to learn, and that's all you can do.
We all are born different. As we grow, the experiences we have develop into outlooks uniquely our own, charting our life's course. No one sees an idea, opinion, or opportunity like you. And no one sees you like VU. Victoria University. Uniquely you.
At Alida, our signature program, Alida Connect, is something we're really passionate and proud of. We bring together groups of 5 to 6 people around the globe from diverse backgrounds, sport, industry, social venture and the arts. We come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
The thing that I've loved about it is not just the meetings that we have with our group, it's the thinking that you do for days and days afterwards. Someone says something and it sparks a thought, and I found that I would go back and look at things that I was doing in a different light. Within my sport and within women's sport, I'm just someone who I try to lead by keeping people talking about the issues. There's times when I think the person I'm trying to convince is not listening to me. It actually got me thinking about, okay, this is how I need to address my communication with them. So it was so valuable, and the little group that we've got is great, and I'm really looking forward to sort of continuing to connect with them into the future because we're all so very different. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it.
And you've been a really strong voice on what's unfolding in the Middle East, and I sometimes look at that and feel incredibly uneducated, as you described, and the complexities and the thousands of years of history that have gone on into some of those conflicts. Again, you seem to be able to come to a position where you said that's right and that's wrong. Where does that land for you? It seems like a challenging thing on something that's so emotional and so hard to get your head around as the Middle East.
Well, to me, what was really helpful was going there and seeing it for myself. And I would honestly encourage, when obviously now you can't, but when anyone gets the chance to see it for yourself. And what I found so powerful is that I saw things that nobody can take away from me. And I went in there really similar to what you're saying, going, oh, everyone's saying it's very complicated. And then when you go there, it's that thing about humanity, when you see some fundamental injustice and how I didn't even realize that people could be treated like that until I saw it. And something as obvious as, who gets to use the highway? Oh, it's Israelis and foreigners and Palestinians need to use these dangerous, windy roads. I saw 3-4 car crashes in a week. It's something as simple as that. Or, who has drinkable water? Who doesn't have drinkable water? Yeah. It's that simple. Who is able to build a house? Oh, Palestinian, 98% of building permits are rejected. It's this kind of basic stuff. I remember when I came back and I was, my partner studies in Austria, and the plane landed in Austria. For the first time, I cried. I didn't cry one time when I was there because it was too overwhelming to see that people could do this to each other. And when I was there, after I was just in Austria, I was seeing people go do their daily shop. And I was like, it's so crazy the world is just going when I know now that this suffering is happening in real time. So I just think when we say it's complicated, I mean, I can only talk about my experiences and what I've seen, but it's just that thing of see it for yourself. Yeah. And it's as obvious as somebody kicking somebody on the ground. It's obvious as that. You'd step in. It's the same kind of thing.
I had an experience this week where I had dinner with a 25-year friend of mine, a Jewish friend of mine, and there's 4 of us at dinner. This discussion inevitably came up, and I weighed in, as I think any human who sees women and children, and on whatever side, whatever colour, whatever race, whatever background, if you've got a heart or you've got any sense of humanity, you can't help. It's emotional, even living as far away in the world as we did. and it didn't go well, you know. And reflecting on it the next day, and I rang him and I said, well, I just don't feel, when you think about it, educated enough to understand the history, and if that's causing disturbance and changing friendships on that basis, it's a difficult situation, isn't it? I think anyone would, on either side, isn't it? Someone crosses the border and murders and rapes women and children, and how do you differentiate that from a missile landing on a school and killing innocent people on either side, isn't it? I just, the word complex is the only thing I can say, because if you boil it down, it just seems to be an impossible thing to have an opinion on that is right or wrong. It's hard, isn't it?
I think it's so fascinating, and people say that Palestine is the microcosm of everything, and I really think that's the case. And, you know, what I would say to people is, you see what you're seeing. You know, this is a live stream documented genocide, and what you're seeing, your eyes are not betraying you. This is a place basically the size of Melbourne that's now flat. It's flattened. There's nothing there. Nearly all but one of the hospitals have been flattened. You know, there's nothing there. So believe your eyes. And I think often, and I understand when people, maybe I don't understand people say it's complex, because I see it and I find it not complex. But I get why in Australia it could seem confusing. But like I said, I mean, trust the human rights experts, trust the videos, the documented evidence. Because I think sometimes when you hear propaganda, there's this thing of kind of your humanity is inside, and sometimes people can push it down and say, this is, I don't understand. Your gut's telling you something, right? So trust. I mean, I trust that. I just saw, a mass ethnic cleansing of an entire group of people. Like, we saw it all over our Instagram feeds. Feel that, ask more, learn more. There's so many brilliant thinkers, Noam Chomsky for one, who's been talking about this for so long, decades. And I feel this shift that's happening, and I see what's happening with Antoinette Lattouf. I feel that things are changing. More and more people are seeing what's actually happening. And, I'm only one of many, many witnesses. And, strangely, after I went to Palestine, I went to South Africa. I did an internship there with amazing guys working in townships with young people in the poorest areas of Cape Town. And I see the way that they see themselves in Palestine, because the way that people are dehumanized and subjugated, it's mirroring the same thing as Black people in South Africa. But they are a living product of the ability to overcome. And I found it so inspiring to be in that space. And nobody, no matter if you're white or Black or mixed, everyone was able to talk about the history, to own the history, to imagine what they could be. And they also, I think, really felt that connection to those suffering. It wasn't just, I'm far away, so why would I care? It's, we're brothers, we're sisters. We are connected in our struggle. That was something I'd never felt before.
That's why I love these conversations, Yasmin. I was really keen to see you again. We sat at this breakfast, and as I said, from afar, I thought that's a really courageous person. The word I kept coming back to. I like the elephant in the room sometimes, because I think you've got to, for a reason, you should address that. And doing my homework in the last couple of days, and Peter Dutton's been on this podcast. He's a friend of mine. I know his family well, and his wife Kiralee, and to me, I think one of the lost arts is to say, I'm 2 weeks away from being a 50-year-old white male. So I understand, your lived experiences, from, some would say, humble beginnings, but I've had a privileged life. And I think sometimes we don't come together to have these conversations. And when you do, and you take the bias out, I often find 95, we've got more in common, all of us, than we actually think. It feels like the world now is, that person's evil, that person disagrees with me, so I hate them, I don't want to speak with them, I want to listen to them. Do you feel like we've lost that art, even at the most polar ends of the spectrum, to come together and see where the common ground is?
Yes. I mean, for so many reasons, but I guess first I would say to that, I mean, it's interesting, this framing of, like, I think sometimes it can go two ways, right? Often men can be like, well, I'm just not going to say anything because I don't understand. Yeah. Or it's, who are you to tell me, I'm like, blah, blah. And actually, it is multiple things to be true that, yes, you have more power and privilege in this world than others. But hey, you can't change that. Isn't that an extraordinary opportunity to be able to change things? And it isn't just white men. Like what I was saying before, all Australians have so much more power and privilege than, let's say, somebody in the Middle East who is looking in the sky and seeing rockets above their head. We have so much more comfort and luxury. And to me, that's a moral obligation to each other as humans to support one another, to learn more, to not close away and cover our ears. And, again, what South Africa taught me is while Mandela is, a huge part of this, it was also enough white Afrikaners. I learned about something called the Black Sash, which was whenever black people would be harassed in South Africa, white women would stand in between them and the police and would be pushing back against forced removals where they were demolishing their homes. This is the obligation we have to each other as human beings. I think sometimes in this growingly tribalistic way of thinking, we miss this ethical and moral obligation to each other. So I think we have a obligation to stand up for humanity, no matter who it is, no matter their background. Yeah. We're all part of this.
Is that why cancel culture to me has become this really toxic thing that happens where people who do attempt to try and do exactly what you say and stand up for their belief and maybe get a word wrong or a phrase wrong, which we're all a chance to do sitting in front of a microphone. Where do you sit on that? Because I think that we've seen examples of people that have been literally destroyed by a nuance in a word or two. Is that a concern for you as well?
Yeah, to be honest, we can blame people, but honestly, I put a lot of blame on social media companies because I think it's fueled, and that's speaking of that division too. Every time somebody is enraged or angry or engages, that's money for them. And I think we need to put that in context that often algorithmically, something that it's not often the things that don't work on the algorithm. It's not really things that make you reflect. It's things that prompt an immediate emotion, saying sadness, anger, joy, happiness, like humor. That's what's going to get bumped up. So yes, I think cancel culture can be an issue. I think, or at least it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's cancel culture. I think it's the way that politics can be very superficial. So I see often with celebrities, there's if you don't say this, you'll be cancelled, which obviously it's great if they speak up for Palestine or say something, but it's missing the depth, I think. But again, I think a lot of that is just, again, algorithmically. And it also kind of feeling very disconnected from each other as human beings. So seeing each other as enemy is, I think, a lot more common and easier to do with the way that social media works. People become very 2D and flat. Yeah. So I feel concerned not even just about that, but about how we're seeing each other, how we're thinking about things. And I feel for that one, I feel like there's not really much that at least I can do in this moment right now. But I do think people need to realize that every time they're engaging with this, that's another $1 for Mark Zuckerberg. Really think about who's actually getting that money and funding from your outrage over things that maybe don't matter as much.
Do you have any Israeli or Jewish friends?
Jewish friends, yes.
Yeah.
Not Israelis. No, but I studied with Israelis in my course, which was one of the very emotional things, like I was saying, when it really fractured the cohort, I think.
It did?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think often countries fell into line. So not all Americans, of course, but, it would be the Australians, Americans, whatever, and the Israelis. And then it would be the countries that were colonized, Peru, Colombia, it would be Philippines that were it was people, you can see how one's history really changes and affects how you see conflict. So that's really something that I wanted to break free of in the way that I saw in real time how a country's national narrative can immediately create these alliances. And again, I want it to come down to basic and common humanity. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think others, it's not that they didn't see it that way. I think actually while some were pro-Israel, some were pro-Palestine, many were silent. That was the killer. Many people didn't want to know. And that's what I realized. many people, it was too uncomfortable to look at what's happening and to take a stance. So they just hoped that it would go away.
Yasmin, you've got a great leadership story, and I love sitting across from different people, unique backgrounds, and yours is really unique, and these patterns around what we see great leadership looks like, and this idea that hard to lead anyone else unless you understand what your own sense of self-leadership means. What does that mean to you? How do you lead yourself so you can lead others?
I think it's to own my story, to know where I come from, to feel that responsibility to my ancestors before me, to realize, I think, that things change, and what may seem crazy now, I was just talking about apartheid South Africa, right? In the 60s, that seemed impossible. Whereas in 94, Mandela was elected. Things can change so much faster than you realize. So it's to keep the faith and have that courage, I think, to imagine something better. And really, I think it isn't, I would hate it if it was just me thinking of things and just sitting on my own thinking about what I want to change. I gain that from meeting with people, from my friends, from seeing the world and its complexity. So I think, again, it's always keeping that open-mindedness that the world is not how you see it. There are many people who have experienced the world completely differently, to have the humility to recognize that. That's what I always want to try to carry with me, plus the dream of better.
Is there a piece of leadership advice that you pass on?
It's to remember humanity first. Again, I think people can make things overcomplicated for good reason. People can make, I think, really clear moral stances somehow controversial or difficult for shareholders or etc. But again, if enough people speak up about it, it's not controversial anymore. And I think we're seeing a real deficit in leadership in the past couple of years, a real cowardice. So again, if you are going to say that you're committed to social justice or whatever, show it, because in times where it matters, that's when people are watching. Not when it's convenient, not when it's International Women's Day, when it's inconvenient. That's the test of humanity.
You and I lived in a city that was locked down more than any other city in the world on record, and there was a lot of silence in that. A lot of people with big voices were silent. Were you surprised about that as well?
I feel like I didn't say much. I think at that time it was, for me, it was survival. It was just like trying to get through that time. So I think that was less surprising for me. I mean, for me, it was just, I was very like in my own, just trying to get through my studies, which I guess is maybe how other people are feeling when it comes to other complicated things.
Yeah, it's that, isn't it? It's lived experience, isn't it? It's I think if you're living my lived experience was seeing 4 kids miss 2 years of school, so I suppose it personalises it, doesn't it?
Right. Immediately,
and you're thinking of their health and their mental health and what you can do and how helpless you are in that situation. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's life's. I keep coming back to the word complex because there's this great courageous person sitting across from me who's got more courage than almost anyone I've ever sat in front of, and I admire it so much. It's but you can't. You have to pick your battles. You can't fight everyone on every scenario, can you? Too.
I mean, what I would encourage with personalising it, like you mentioned, your kids who lost 2 years. Like, look at Palestine, right? It's like there's so largest cohort of child amputees in history. So many gone. There's like irreparable trauma. Yeah. So I think it's
or Ukraine, or the tragedy that's unfolded everywhere in the world.
Everywhere. It's that. Yeah. It's to see in my child or my friend, to see it, to like humanize the news.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard unless you see it for yourself, in my experience. But I think it's helpful to know, it's to not even frame it as different battles, but to have an approach to the world. And again, that open heart, open mind, commitment to humanity.
Yeah.
It's the principles first, and then go out into the world. And I saw that in South Africa, where I see the way they have a moral obligation to the world because of that history, and how just that, it's the lens itself, it's the way that you see struggles and pain. It's how you see all of it rather than how you approach individual ones.
Curiosity is a word we see a lot when I sit down with people who've been able to achieve like you have. How does that work for you? Are you inherently curious, and does that take you down different rabbit holes of curiosity?
I try to be. I think sometimes when I'm feeling more burnt out, it's really hard when you care. I think sometimes it's really hard and it's really sad. I think sometimes a lot of what I feel, particularly with Palestine, it's like once you start caring about it, it's just endless heartbreak. So I think my heart's been broken a million times. And it's hard to feel sometimes that sense of curiosity. But I think at my best, when I'm feeling my best, that's when that comes up. And what I actually really enjoy is even when terrible things are happening in this world, which they are, it's building something with other people and working on something and actually building something together. And that's what I try to do, with all the different work that I'm doing. It's nice to at least feel like at the end of the day, like I'm working on something, a thing. And even if that improves it by 0.0001%, I'm still spending my precious time in my life, rather than just sitting at a desk doing whatever, to actually create something meaningful and hopefully of value. And that's I think where the curiosity comes in. It's accepting the conditions that we exist in and thinking about how to operate even in a small space, about how to make it even an inch better.
Yeah. Speaking of that precious time, we love this quote that the cost of leadership is time, and then balancing that out with, as you just said, living a life and wanting to impact, but also, as you said, move the needle forward. How do you balance that in your life, that balance of leadership and time?
To me, I see it as one and the same. When I was in high school, I always thought there was a few career paths, and I was like, I want to be a lawyer, which is like every other high schooler because that's like all we know, or a doctor or engineer or whatever. It's to realize that actually when you put your intentions forward about what you want from the world, you actually claim it rather than letting the world shape you. These pathways open that you would have no idea exist. I never in a million years could have imagined that my life would turn out this way or my work would look like this. It's just not something that you can see on LinkedIn or something. It just happens that once you actually have the courage to make your views and beliefs clear, right, and your goals or goals in this world or what you want to change, these opportunities happen, but you have to be open to meeting those people, which involves being in these spaces and again having the courage to be there. So I think life has a funny way of just kind of unfolding, and I always try not to be too prescriptive about what I want to do or like a 5-year plan or something like that, because often it's just like being in this space leads to me meeting this person and we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we work on this or X, Y, Z? And that's how it happens. And I think that's just how I'm going to be, open to that. And also, I think, again, do my moral obligation as a human being to each other.
Yes, and we've seen you, at 20 years of age, debate 20, 30-year politicians, and you've got a great way of communicating, a great way of articulating your point of view. Have you thought about the way you communicate? Have you got a mantra about the way that you try and get your message across?
No. I think it honestly just kind of happens. I actually think when I get upset by something, I speak a lot clearer. I actually learnt a lot from Grace Tame. When I watched her National Press Club speech, I found that after I was like, I didn't even realize you could be that straightforward about it. So I really appreciate being around women who pull no punches when it comes to speaking. When it comes to my speaking, what I try to do and bring is a different lens, a different way of viewing things, because it's that thing of if nobody says it, it won't be said. So I'm going to try to bring it in from a young person's perspective or young women's perspective of how they experience politics, because they're not here, they're not sitting around here. And again, it's that obligation to them to be able to kind of raise what they're experiencing that so often is not raised in Canberra. So that's the lens that I try to bring, which makes it a lot easier because it's no longer about getting all the answers or getting the right answer, but it's about talking about how different groups of people are experiencing problems who, again, otherwise wouldn't have been able to have their say. So that's how I try to kind of frame that. It's a frame.
Who's been the greatest leader in your life, Yasmin?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a clear answer to that. It's like different pockets of people. You know, I think of South Africa and I think of a guy I worked with, Zaki Ahmed. He's Malay, Cape Malay. I'm Malay. He was an HIV AIDS activist in the 90s. You know, he's a awesome bloke, ran as an independent candidate. Again, taught me a lot about working with grassroots. He was working with young and disabled communities and townships. My partner, you know, he has taught me so much about justice in the world because of his upbringing and, you know, coming from a low-income background. My mum, you know, the friends around me, particularly those who come from areas where their story is written for them. They don't have the chance to speak. They teach me so much about, again, that courage and still speaking even when it's inconvenient and saying their truth. So it's everyone around me. I don't think I can pick one. All of these things have shaped my life.
Beautiful answer. You've, as I said, been in these incredible global forums and had this chance to collaborate with a range of different people. We're a bit obsessed with this idea of collaboration for good, and when you bring different voices together, that great things happen. Has there been someone in any of your work you thought, God, that's the person I'd like to have collaborated with now or historically? Is there a name that springs to mind?
I don't think I see it that way, you know, because I think often it's I just basically want to be part of building ecosystems and networks that grow and grow and grow. And it's that thing of what may seem difficult or impossible to make it possible. So there are people that I really admire. So one person is Yanis Varoufakis. I don't know if you know of him, but he's the former Greek finance minister when there was the big financial collapse. He is a Marxist economist. He's an Aussie citizen. He taught at UCID actually. He has an excellent press club speech, National Press Club speech I'd recommend people watching. He's brilliant. And so he's one of the people that I really admire. Greta Thunberg is somebody who I really admire. I think there's a lot of conviction that she has and a unimaginable levels of people trying to make her silent. So funny, I was in Sweden once and there was a school strike protest and I thought, why not go? It was the first day of me being in Stockholm. And I was like, what if we see Greta Thunberg? And my partner was like, look to the left. And she was there. And, you know, she taught me something really powerful that day. She was there before anyone else was there. This would have been her 2000th protest. This was a year ago. She was there before anyone else was there. She was last to leave. And again, she goes there. I can't even imagine how many protests she's done. She wasn't standing at the front. She stood in the middle with the protesters. And you just realize this is just a young woman who just believes in taking climate action and standing up for those that are oppressed. She just shows up. And that's how simple it is. It's just showing up. And it's not just going there for the selfie or the photo op. It's being consistent. So it's people like that that inspire me. But, I don't think it's necessarily dream collaboration. It's a dream world.
Well, yes, it's a great note to finish on. No one's ever going to accuse you of doing anything apart from showing up with great courage, the word I keep coming back to, and to listen to you speak, as clearly as you do and as passionately, and living the life your way you do is incredibly inspiring, and great to meet you again. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much.